John Sears from Forest Parks and Recreation here again to talk to you today about Power BI. So what is Power BI and why do we care about Power BI? So Power BI is fundamentally a dashboard reporting system. It's really, really great. And what's great about it is that it is interactive. So it's more than just some charts and some graphs and some text and a customizable dashboard like you could kind of sort of do in Excel, but it is interactive. So not only can you provide the data the way you want to provide it, but it's also the ability to allow people to dig deeper on their own to find the answers to the questions that they have. So, and because it is part of the Office 365 suite, it's a tool that everyone has access to. It's not something you need to request specifically, like SSRS reporting or R or some other piece of software. If you have Office 365, you have access to Power BI, although you may need to request IT to install the desktop application, which is what I'm going to be showing here today. You can do some stuff in the online version, but the desktop application's got a lot more functionality. And the really cool thing about Power BI is you can pull data from a ton of different sources, everything from an Excel spreadsheet to a SharePoint list to a SQL database. So no matter where your data is, you can use Power BI to share it. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to walk through some basic features, importing data, creating graphics, and sharing a dashboard. We're going to do an exercise where you can follow along at home with presumably an Excel file of your own. We're going to cover a little bit of best practices. Now, if you're noticing anything missing, it's that we're not covering any advanced features, and it's because throughout most of these Microsoft Essentials series, I've been positioned as an expert in the topic, or at least very advanced in the topic, and I'm sort of showing you an introduction, but I know a lot more than I'm showing, and there's a lot more in-depth coverage that's available that I can provide. Power BI is an exception to that. I consider myself very much a beginner at Power BI. So what I'm going to show you is an introduction. My knowledge does not go considerably deeper than what I'm showing you today. So just keep that in mind as we talk through it. And by all means, ask any questions that occur to you, but just know that of all of the things that we've covered, Power BI is definitely the thing that I am least well versed in. So just bear that in mind. And here you can see just an example of one of the Power BI dashboards that I built. It looks really fancy, and that's one of the great things about Power BI is that you look like you're a genius when you put it together, but it's really not that complicated, and you're going to see the level of work that it takes to go in. Some of it might be some new concepts to you, but I promise when we go through the exercise, it'll really help you understand how it comes together. So first things first, we have to import data. So Power BI can connect to a lot of different data sets. You can see here sort of the rundown of some of the most popular avenues for data import, everything from Excel, text, SharePoint, even Access, a lot of key stuff here, but there's also SQL, Azure, some online systems that maybe you've never even heard of. You can even reach in and get data on PDFs or data from folders. It's one of its great strengths is the versatility of the data sets that you can access, and you can access multiple different data sets within one workspace. And we're going to get into what a workspace is, but you'll begin your Power BI journey by pulling in data. And once you choose the data that you want to bring in, it'll open up this Power Query editor. So if you have had any experience with Power Query, but you haven't done Power BI, it's because Power Query is also built into Excel. And the version of Power Query that is in Power BI is very similar to that in Excel. And basically what it allows you to do is basically allows you to do cleanup, formatting. It basically allows you to shape the data that's coming in that you eventually want to process. So whether that's establishing relationships between data tables, whether that's clearing out columns or updating data types of columns. You can do that all here in Power Query. And what it does is it will run whatever those applied steps are. It'll apply each of those every single time you run it. So you really only have to do it once to shape the data the way that you want to shape it. And from that point on, even if the source data gets updated, it will still run those steps to the data. So you don't have to delete a column every time the data gets updated. You only have to do it once in Power Query, and it will take care of it from there. So we know where the data is, we bring it in versus with Power BI, and then we use the Power Query editor to kind of shape the data in the format that we need in order to process it. Once your data is in, you'll see it over here on the right. So this is an example of processing some heavy cut data that we had. You'll see each of the columns kind of listed here. It will automatically try and convert dates to a structured hierarchy, which means like it's preserving things like year, month, quarter, like basic information about that that would be useful when you're trying to do some data processing. And then from those fields, you can create visualizations. So there are a wide range of visualizations that you can create in Power BI. It's not, I would say, quite as expansive as all the stuff you can do in Excel, but every single one of these charts is interactive. And if you are not on the government client, you can actually bring in additional visualizations that third parties have created. And there are a lot of really cool ones there. Building these charts is relatively simple. You just kind of specify various things about it. For example, this is a stacked bar chart. You just have to specify what you're grouping by on the x-axis. In this case, we're grouping by exemption code, so UVA, CHIP, denied, FMP, Act 250. What you're counting up on the y-axis, in this case, it's parcel size. And then you can bring in a legend, and so you can kind of create that stack effect, right? Where I want to view it by district. So, for UVA, District 4 represents about half of the total data in this stack. You can change the size of the visualizations with these little handles in the bottom left and bottom right corners. So you can make them take up as much of this total operating space as you want. And you can also create additional tabs. So a given Power BI dashboard could have multiple tabs. And at any given point, you can customize your visuals using additional things here. So from things like tweaking your axes to anything you could think of to change a visualization. Once you've sort of built your visualization, so again, that could be, multiple different visuals, you can have filters, you can apply these slicers or filters to individual graphics, or you could apply them across the whole tab, or you can apply them across the entire dashboard itself. So you can sort of customize what level of filtering and sorting you want to do. And you can build them out however you want. Once that's done, you're ready to share your dashboard. So sharing a dashboard is relatively simple. So you'll see here, there's a little publish button. When you go to publish it, you'll publish it to something called a workspace. Generally speaking, when you're publishing, you want to publish to your own workspace. You can publish to public workspaces, but they require various levels of IT support. And also, I'll get into a little bit. There's a licensing thing around sharing dashboards. I'm still a little unclear as to what level of permissions you have to share. I have a pro license, which costs me $10 a month, and I have had no problems publicly sharing my dashboards, but they are available to anyone with the link. I think you have to pay for a higher tier of service if you want to be able to share it to specific audiences. So you can go ahead and open up your data set here. This is in the, so you have to jump to the online side of things. So this is Power BI on the Office 365 side, so not the desktop application. You can schedule your data refresh. So you can schedule multiple daily refreshes. You could do it once a month, once a week, whatever data refresh cycle makes sense. It's basically how often does the data that's being fed in need to keep updated? Now, a lot of what I do is Microsoft Form pushes data to SharePoint list using Power Automate, all tools that we've covered so far. So check back in the video history if you're on YouTube, if you haven't caught all of those. But then those SharePoint lists feed into a Power BI dashboard. And I'm running a daily refresh so that the data that goes in to that, the data that is submitted in the form is automatically getting pushed to the SharePoint list. And at the end of the day, that SharePoint list data is getting updated in Power BI so that the report that's being used has the most recent data. You can set up multiple daily refreshes. It doesn't have to be just one, but you could set up as many as you want. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and open up your report, go ahead and embed it, and then publish to web. Some of these other options are a bit iffy permission-wise, depending on the license you have for Power BI. Again, everyone's got the basic license, but the sharing permissions is where that basic license will start to let you down. That said, you can always share the file. In that case, it functions a little bit like an Excel file where you send it to someone, they open it up in the program, and they can see the things. So let's go ahead and jump in an exercise because a lot of that's kind of esoteric, but we can dig in and deal with it for real. So this is the Power BI application. If you open it up without opening any particular workspaces, this is what it'll give you. In this case, we're going to go ahead and import data from Excel. So you can either go up here to get data and grab an Excel workbook. You can click Excel workbook right here. You can import data from Excel here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I grab my downloads, and I've got some license information that I want to grab here. So when you go ahead and grab it, it will give you multiple options for what you want to import. In this case, we don't have any actual tables, which is poor planning on my part, because it will give you the option of tables or tabs, depending on whether or not your Excel spreadsheet has tables or tabs. In this case, I just want to grab this tab because it's got all the data that I want. And I'm going to go ahead and it gives you the option to load or transform. We'll do transform just so you can see how that looks. Oops. This opens up the Power Query. So the Power Query will let us do certain things. It allows us to check. So it's trying to give this contact ID and license as numbers. It does a lot of auto assigning of columns. We can kind of scroll through here and make sure these seem okay. They largely seem fine. If you wanted to, we could say, all right, well, I don't care about this end date, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to remove it. And you see it added that step. So once I'm done and I apply and close, every time it does the data refresh, it's automatically going to remove that column. So that column will never show up in my data set. And you can apply additional formats here if, it automatically thinks this license number is a number and this contact ID is a number. If I want to, I can go ahead and change the type, and I want this to be a text. I can go ahead and do that too, and you'll see that that changed, that added another applied step. And again, it'll do that every single time. So I'm going to go ahead, and there are additional things you could do here. So you could create crosstabs using group bys. You can add additional calculated columns so that it'll calculate it every time. Again, you only have to set it up the once. So if you get it to work the way you want. So if I wanted to do some basic math here and do the start date minus the submission date, the way I would do that here is I would add an additional calculated column that would do that math for me. So I could automatically have that as a column. I'm not going to do that right here, right now, but that's another thing that you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and apply and close. It's bringing in that data. It's loading in the number of records. There are approximately 5,000. And you can see the table showing up over here. There aren't that many columns in this data set, which I did deliberately. But now we can go ahead and we can build our visuals. So let's go ahead and start with a stacked column chart. So this is fairly simple. I just click it and it throws it in. And then we can just pick what we want on the x-axis, the y-axis, and the legend. So in this case, I want to group things by regional office. So we'll go ahead and grab regional office, make that the x-axis. On the y-axis, why don't we go ahead and just grab activity? Because basically what we want to do is we just want to count them. So really quick, you can see that we've got a basic bar chart of count of activities. So basically, this is the number of licenses that have come in for Barre, Essex, Springfield, Montpelier, Rutland, St. Johnsbury, and blank. And we can go ahead and if we want to, we can add a legend, which will give us another, which will give us the stacked nature of it. So we can do that here and you can see, all right, half of the ones in Barre have been terminated. And the other great thing about this is it's interactive, I mentioned. So you can do things like mouse over and it can tell you details about it and you can actually customize what it shows up in the mouse over. This isn't just a thing that it's doing here as I'm building it. This is functionality that your users will have when they're accessing the dashboard where they can mouse over it and you can see that there are 381 Barre terminated licenses. So we'll go ahead and we'll add another visualization here. We'll add a pie chart. So again, I can just, whoops. One thing is I've got this highlighted. You can see by the little things on it. So if I click that, it'll try and convert it to a pie chart. So just be careful to click off of it. And then I can click to add a pie chart. So why don't we just go ahead and click on status. So it's going to try and bring that in as the legend. So that's how it's going to parse it. And we want our values to be the count of activity. And so you can see here now that we have full access there of the different statuses and we can see the visualization. So if we want to look at Montpelier, we can just click on Montpelier and you can see the tools interact with each other. So if I want to just click on terminated, it'll highlight just terminated. Power BI is really, really cool. It also offers things like drill down and you can do some automatic filtering and sorting. It's really, really cool and really, really customizable. So to sort of bring things home, we'll just add one last element here, which let's go ahead and add a slicer. So the slicer can customize the visuals and you can actually build in default filters or slices right here on this tab. But we can go ahead and say, let's add type 2 as this is almost all of them. So we can go ahead and format that. Oops. Where is it? There we go, slicer settings. So we can change the orientation, the selection. We can change it to horizontal. So now they're like little buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, so I just want to know what's going on with camping. Let's go ahead and take that filter off. So now you can see the breakdown of just camping activities, or just biking activities, or just overnight activities. Or I can hold control and say, okay, I just want overnight, snowshoeing, races, and special. And it will show me just the breakdowns of those. And this functionality right here is exactly the same functionality as the dashboard that you share. So when we're ready to publish it, we just go ahead and hit publish. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't actually want to publish it because this is private data, but this is your dashboard. And this took me about 2 seconds to put together. And I can make this publicly available. It's great as a way of a lot of the problems we want to share our data, but we don't want to give them the whole Excel spreadsheet, or it lives in a SharePoint list, but you don't want them modifying the SharePoint list. This is a great way of providing the visualizations you want to do. And a lot of times people will have questions about the data. And if you can try to anticipate those questions, you can build a dashboard, send them the dashboard, and let them answer their own questions that they might have, or do their different breakdowns. If, I can't necessarily anticipate what someone's going to want to know, but, maybe they really want to know what's going on with snowmobiling. So I can just hit snowmobiling and you can see, okay, Barrie had 8 of those. Those are all terminated. Springfield had 6 of them that are terminated, 1 of them that's active, and there are 2 in Essex, 1 that's been terminated and 1 that's currently active. And of all the snowmobiles, 2 are active and 15 are terminated. And this is, again, just a very basic, very simple dashboard that I put together. We can add additional tabs that have different focuses or that have very specific filters on them. So like the second page here might have, so this is my Barrie page, right? And if I go ahead and I drop this bar chart in here, and I'm going to go ahead and say, what are the count of activities? Oops. Status, activity. And this is being filtered down to just Barrie. So this is a Barrie specific tab. And you can see how easy that is to build it, to customize it, to interact with it. That's Power BI. So we built an interactive dashboard. So let's talk a little bit through best practices and then leave some time at the end for questions. So what are you supposed to do with this Power BI thing and you're interested in exploring it? Replace your reports with interactive dashboards. Are you creating a report every year or every 3 months? Stop that. Connect to your data with Power BI, build a dashboard, make it available, and then people can pull the data whenever they want. And you can group by year so that if you're creating an annual report, for example, you could do a thing that's like 2021, 2022. People can pull up not just the current year, but any past year. So basically, you never have to do a report again. All you have to do is push this data to the public, easily accessible. All the data is there, and you can recreate a lot of the visualizations. There are even cool text analyses that you can have Power BI generate automatically based on the way the data is curated. So insights from the data can come from Power BI based on the way your user impacts the data. A lot of times when you're sharing an Excel spreadsheet, for example, you get these view conflicts where different people are filtering and sorting stuff weirdly. Power BI doesn't just have visualizations, it can also share tables and charts and all sorts of stuff. So you could put that data in Power BI and people can look at it, interact with it, and there's none of that visualization. There's none of that conflict of having a singular version of it that lots of people are messing with. And because it's an Office 365 product, it's really good at being embedded in things. So you can take that public dashboard and you can make it a tab on Teams. If you have the appropriate license, you can actually create a Power BI tab that directly links to a dashboard that you can make available. So, you know, if I want that license information to be available to my team, I can go ahead and create a tab in our team that directly touches that data. Now, I would need to work with my IT department to probably gain access to the backend SQL because that Excel file that I uploaded in here was just a default report that I was pulling from that. But if I had access to the raw data and I had some experience in SQL, it would not be that hard to pull that backend data. And all you need is the right permissions to do it. And it doesn't require the same level of permissions. So IT departments are more inclined to give you access to that data because they're not actually giving you access to the tables. They can just create the views that you need to work with. So that's Power BI. I want to leave some time at the end for questions. I see 2 already. Can you define what you mean by data that can be pulled? Curious about the application of this to pull from a PDF. Yeah, so Power Query can pull data from PDFs. And in some cases, that's really, really useful. So for example, there's the state's pay chart is usually published in a PDF format. And that is generally not all that useful because if you've ever tried to copy and paste from a PDF, it doesn't work well. But if you import the data either in Power BI or you can do it in Power Query and Excel, you can bring it in as a table, retain the table-like nature of it, and keep that data moving forward. So if there's a table in a PDF somewhere online, you can just go and pull it from Power BI and bring it in as another data set in your workspace. Yeah, and can you embed a dashboard / report on a website? Absolutely. So basically, when you publish it, it's published as a website that you can link and share any way you want. So if you're using an iframe or something, you can absolutely embed it, or you can just share it as a link so that people can go directly to the dashboard to work with it. Any other questions? Again, I'll try my best to answer it, but remember, I am a self-avowed non-expert. Okay. Well, thank you so much for Power BI. I hope to see you guys in 2 weeks where we're going to be talking about OneNote. And if your thought is OneNote that weird thing that I never touch, that is usually bundled up with all the other Office 365 stuff? Yeah, that's the one. But trust me when I say OneNote is extremely powerful and really, really useful. So tune into that if you can. Otherwise, we'll be finishing up with in early January with the final one of our series where we're going to touch on a bunch of stuff that wasn't quite big enough for its own topic, but still really, really useful and really, really practical. So want to wish all of you a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.